Hi, it's Alina here. So today I will be discussing the wet rooms and torture chambers that are often used by the four-letter agencies Dark Fleet, and they have the secret space programs associated with these groups. So basically all this information comes from my memory recall of about a month and a half ago, so end of October, starting November, that's when these memories surfaced. And today is December the 18th, 2017. So all of this information that I'll be discussing from the memory recall, it's very painful, it's very traumatic, and it's viewer beware. This information is not the easiest to listen to or hear. So it could be difficult to listen to, and because it's very traumatic and dark information. So about a month ago, I started having memories of someone, perhaps a captive asset in the Dark Fleet, having their hands cut off, then shocked with electricity, where the hands were chopped off, then the hands were painfully reattached. Then the person was beaten almost to death. The torture room where they were held was filled with water, and the subjects ended up swimming for hours on end in their own blood. These interrogation rooms are called wet rooms because brutal torture is done there, with rivers of blood running on the floors, walls, and ceilings. So just imagine being in a almost closed off small torture chamber. It's a small room and it fills up with water to the brim, and the person is swimming in their own blood, basically, after the interrogation. Not a pretty sight. There are various drainage systems, hoses, etc. in the wet rooms to clean up the blood spatters and other biological matter after the torture is over, so there is no evidence left of the tortures performed in the wet rooms. There are fixers and private cleaning contractor teams who remove all traces of torture left by physical matter, which is biological matter like blood spatters and other excrements. Because when people that are being tortured and beaten and blood splattering everywhere, they can have problems with accidentally going to the bathroom while being tortured, and there's nowhere to go to the bathroom, so they may pee, or this is painful, or they may have feces on them, excrete feces while being tortured, because when you're scared, bad things happen to you, and you can lose bowel and bladder control when being tortured. So you end up accidentally going into the bathroom all over yourself. People were also being hung up to the ceiling in shackles and beaten with electric prods. There were also people sitting in cages waiting for their turn to be tortured, and some were sleeping in jail cells on metal slabs without a mattress or a pillow. This is done to make the subjects feel immense pain and discomfort, so it will be easier to break down their emotional and physical states of being, fracturing their mind and personalities to make them malleable to any types of unlawful confessions and torture by interrogations that are brutal. So basically, these people are broken down. Their mental state is totally in shreds. So they end up having multiple personality disorders with various personalities attached to them. They end up having post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They end up having anxiety. They end up having depression. because they still feel the pain of the torture and the interrogation. even though they're mind wiped. So they're blank slated. Their memories are, they don't have any memories of what was done to them because that's removed from their brain. So it's called blank slating or mind wiping. So basically all memories of or traces of torture and interrogation, of where they were in facilities, in the wet rooms or torture chambers, who their interrogators were, faces, names, all that is removed. So they have no idea what happened to them, where they were tortured, who tortured them, why they were tortured, for what information. They have no idea anymore because that's all blank slate and mind wiped. They have no memories of it. Sometimes the guards would let starved dogs, or what looked like dogs, maybe it was wolves, attack people and chew on their arms, legs, etc. Or they would set a fire, tie prisoners above on a metal pole, and their backs would torch on the fire while their genitals were being poked with the electric prods. The people were naked during these types of tortures. Now, these tortures were done both to men and women, regardless of sex or race. It's what I remember. People were whipped as well, and they were poked and prodded with nails as well, and their skin was bleeding. I remembered that as well. So it wasn't just electrical prods, it was also whipping and being tortured with nails, like nails that you nail down and hammer, poking people's skin and literally running the nail through the skin, and doing that over and over all over the body to people. Children also went through these tortures, as whole families were kidnapped to hold as leverage against assets. So children were also being burned, and the fire literally burning their backs while they were naked and being poked and prodded with those electrical prods. So this was done to children as well, because they were used as leverage. Whole families kidnapped to use against the assets for whatever means, for torture, just so the assets would confess. That's horrible. These are horrible atrocities. I can't imagine why they would do this. It's horrible. And it's there's sex slavery, there's pedophilia, there's trafficking of children and teenagers and whole families. They put them on shipping crates, on docks, and ship them off to other countries to sell for sex trade, for slavery, for all kinds of deprivations. They do that to teenagers, to children, to babies, and there's money being made from drug dealing and drug trafficking and trafficking of children and families. They use families, they kidnap families to use against assets in these different programs. And the four-letter agencies do it, the Dark Fleet does it, and other groups do it in the secret space program. So this is very prevalent. It's prevalent in the elites, it's prevalent in these programs. So this is dark stuff. This is horrid. There's children, there's women, there's men sitting in cages being shackled to walls and waiting to be tortured. So this goes on day in and day out. This is just normal, standard operating procedures for these programs, the four-letter agencies, and some of the darker aspects of the secret space programs, like the Dark Fleet, or aka Nachtwaffen in German. There were also the metal chairs with metal restraints for arms and legs, where electricity would shock the asset if they were lying during interrogation. Or the metal chairs had nerve gas or poison chemicals attached to them in tanks with IV lines, sending the poison gas/chemicals to subjects being interrogated. They would scream from their skin, literally blistering in boils and peeling off their face and body because of the poison gas. Then when the torture stopped, they were thrown into the regeneration tank, and whatever damage was done to their burned and blistered skin, that damage was repaired like nothing bad had ever happened to the person in order to remove all memories and physical evidence trace of the torture. The acids were suspended in some type of goo gel in the regeneration tank that healed all their injuries. They stayed in the tank for about a day to heal, as well as how their memory was blank slated and wiped. The gel has a substance that removes memory. So while you're being healed in the regeneration tank, you're also being blank slated and mind wiped, so you don't remember any of the torture or where you were held or what was done to you. Again, no names are remembered, no faces, and where the facilities are. And these facilities are top secret and classified. They're often in underground facilities and underground bases and tunnel systems. So mostly these torture chambers and wet rooms are in underground facilities. So they're not on the surface, or if it's somewhere on the surface, it's in a mountain. It's a mountain health facility. Sometimes they also, what they do, they take abandoned facilities like warehouses or factories, and they temporarily use them as wet rooms and torture chambers. Or it's even done on cargo ships. You're out to sea. Nobody will see you, what's going on with you. So it could be done out in the middle of nowhere in the ocean on a cargo ship. It could be a torture facility. So there are other acids present during the torture sessions when others were being tortured in the interrogation rooms. These other acids who are in the room act as witnesses, transcribing the information being revealed by subjects during the torture sessions, which were being facilitated by psychopathic interrogators. The torture sessions were being recorded on video and audio, but a witness had to be present for quality control transcription to make sure the video and audio had not been tampered with while in the session, as well that the interrogators did not get too trigger happy and actually kill the individuals being tortured. These are psychopaths, sociopaths and psychopaths, these interrogators. They're mean, they're brutal, and they're sick. They're perverted. They fully enjoy torturing people. It's their job, and they'll happily kill them if they're allowed to. That's why there's witnesses there. The witnesses in the room, everything is being recorded, video and audio, and that prevents the interrogators from tampering with evidence and from killing the subjects being tortured. It's sick. It's despicable, it's disgusting, and it's sick. For the alien interception and interrogation program, it was very different torture techniques that were implemented. The larger and tougher aliens were held in electromagnetic energy holding fields so they could not escape. The holding energy field was so narrow that large aliens felt trapped and they were suspended in the air. They could not even sit down because the energy field would hold them in this electric field, so they couldn't move. Every time they struggled or lied, the energy field would zap them with electricity as punishment, or bright laser lights would strobe into their eyes to temporarily blind and disorient them, to make them vulnerable and obedient. The alien interception and interrogation program was mostly run by the Dark Fleet. So this is what I've been able to recall from my memory. That's the flashback memories that I had of these wet rooms and torture chambers used by Dark Fleet. The 4-letter agencies is just standard procedure and it's associated with the shadow governments, the military industrial complex, MIC lower SSPs. This stuff is brutal, it's despicable, it's disgusting, but it's being done. There's sex trade, there's slavery, there's sex trafficking, young babies being born into this and brutalized, raped when they're little babies. There's penetration, there's sex involved, anal sex. It's done to babies when they're born. They're born into this slavery. Women and children are kept as dogs and as slaves in cages, and used for pedophilia and blackmail of high-ranking politicians and various SSB assets. The assets are drugged, and they're put in compromising positions, and then they're blackmailed to make them to make them malleable and to comply with various missions and work. So they're made into fixers, and they're made into cleaners, they're made into torturers, interrogators, because they're blackmailed. And the blackmail is used against them to make them do horrible things as well. So this is prevalent, and this goes on behind closed doors and in secret programs, in shadow governments and black-funded projects. This goes on day in and day out. So this is normal for them to do this kind of horrible things. So this is what I've been able to remember, and it's horrible, and it's tough for me to talk about it, but I had to get it out there because this has to stop. It's despicable, but it goes on, and it happens every day to people. Anybody can wind up in a slave, or being sold into sex slavery, sex trafficking, drugs, whatever is being done. You can be born into this. You can be born in a cage, locked up in a cage and being used and raped, physically raped and mind raped every day of your life. It's being done to children, to women, to teenagers. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female. It doesn't matter what your sex or color is. If they think they can use you, they will. They just do it. It's standard procedure. They have no remorse. It's psychopaths and pedophiles and sociopaths. They act as normal people. They get passed for being normal and sane. But they're not. They're crazy and despicable. And people will think they're fine. They can blend into society and be normal. Nobody will ever think twice that they're crazies doing these things, because they blend into society. They're normal. They look normal. They act normal. They hold down daily jobs, but they have their secret assets doing horrible things. Or innocent assets are taken into these programs and indoctrinated into these horrible things that they witness and do. They take innocence and create horrid assets out of them. That's another thing that's done to people. They're kidnapped, they're mind wiped, and they're used over and over again. Innocent civilians who have nothing to do with the military or the Navy or anything else to do with shadow governments, but they're taken into these programs and indoctrinated. And they become part of this stuff on an everyday level. It happens. It could happen to innocents. It could happen to anybody who's unfortunate enough to have psychic abilities or to know something, to be awake. It could happen to anybody, basically. So it's horrible, but it's out there and it's happening.